Property management is very customer service oriented, and there's one golden rule about customer service. Customers are people and should be treated as such. When someone deals with only a few tenants, it's relatively easy to form individual relationships with these tenants and come to care about them. But if someone deals with dozens of rentals, they can fall into the trap of seeing tenants as numbers or objects without any real life beyond that. When performing customer service, you have to remember that the person in front of you is a living, breathing human being. They have wants, fears, hopes, and dreams. If you treat every customer, whether a tenant or not, in a manner that shows you care about them individually, you'll find that your customers are more often than not going to respond in kind. Customer service is so important because the relationship between the tenant and landlord is in the property manager's hands. In essence, you're the face of the landlord in the eyes of the tenant. Think of the landlords you've heard about and the landlords you've had in the past yourself. People will always talk about the really good landlords and the really bad landlords. Word of mouth is a strong form of advertising. One tenant talking about how you're a really horrible property manager can influence dozens of tenants to choose other properties. Conversely, if just one tenant talks about how you're such a great person and property manager, then they could encourage dozens of new tenants to seek out the properties you manage. The importance of this relationship between you and the tenant will also influence how long the tenants will stay with the property. Happy tenants always want to stay longer than unhappy ones. If you can keep your tenants happy, you'll find your bottom line increasing as you have longer-term tenants and more tenants gathered by word-of-mouth advertising. Remember, as a property manager, you're the link between the landlord and the tenant. You're responsible for communicating your tenant's needs to the landlord, as well as communicating the landlord's needs and decisions to the tenants. You can use this role to become an advocate for your tenants, helping the landlord to see their concerns are important. The landlord will most likely not have direct access to the tenants and so will never come to know them as individuals. You must use your position to represent the tenants to your landlord. This doesn't mean that you should try to convince the landlord to lower the rent or upgrade the property. Rather, you should learn what concerns the tenants have and then present those concerns to the landlord. If there are children on the property and people have been asking for new play structure in the common area, the landlord won't know unless you tell them. Likewise, you have to be the face of the landlord when communicating with the tenants. You must let them know that while you empathize with and care about them, you're ultimately an agent for the landlord and on their side. Don't let the tenants feel like they can make arrangements with you to get around the landlord's requirements. This can be a difficult tightrope to walk. You want to care about the concerns of tenants and be a form of conscience for the rules. However, you don't want to become the tenant's buddy that they can use to get around following the rules. One of the important duties of property managers is to ensure that properties are properly maintained. In most cases, the landlord will give the property manager authority to contract for any repairs. Keep in mind that there may be a dollar limit on how much those repairs can cost. You're legally obligated to make repairs to rental properties when the tenants notify you of defects. Depending on the issues to be fixed, states can allow anywhere from 3 to 30 days to address the problem. 3 to 7 days for repairs to necessary systems that provide heat or water to the house is the standard. During this 7-day period, you can have repair persons enter the property at any reasonable time in order to fix the problem. It's still a good idea to let your tenants know exactly when the repair person is scheduled to arrive. This allows the tenant to ensure that someone is there. At the very least, this ensures that the repair person will have access. If you don't fix the problem within 7 days, tenants have the right to repair and deduct. The tenants are legally allowed to hire a repair person to fix the property so long as the cost is less than 1 month's rent. The tenant may then have the cost deducted from their rent. In order to use this remedy, a tenant must first, attempt to contact the landlord. Second, give the landlord up to 7 days to make the repairs. And third, pay only a reasonable amount for the repairs. If the landlord determines that the cost was unreasonably high, then they may only allow the tenant to deduct the reasonable cost for the repairs. You may, with the agreement of the landlord, set a policy that tenants are allowed to make repairs costing less than a set amount. The tenant will need to give notice first and present an itemized receipt afterwards. This kind of policy needs to be written into the rental agreement. Otherwise, you may be accused of failing to maintain the property in a habitable state. If repairs aren't made in a timely manner, then the tenants have the right to sue for damages. These damages can include the economic and emotional damages caused by the lack of repairs. As a property manager, you aren't just managing the physical property. You're also managing the relationship between the tenants and the landlord, carefully balancing providing for the needs of the tenants with fulfilling your duties as an agent of the landlord is the key to success as a property manager.